Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back. This is episode 387. In the news this week, I am actively pursuing a couple of relationships with a couple cool magazines that perhaps we will strike up something that allows us to read those articles on a podcast and discuss, but maybe not this podcast. Did I just drop a hint to something else? Maybe I did. Stay tuned for updates regarding this on our Facebook, on Twitter, and also in the future episodes. We are working on something very special and hope to bring that to you with some solid plans in the next 6 weeks or less. You know me, I like to just jump right in, have everything ready, set, go, and then bam, just drop it on everybody. Here it is, done. Go nuts. So I'm hoping to do that soon, working with my good friends, a couple guys that you might know, and we'll talk more about that later. This week on the program, I have 2 research papers, one called The Level and the Plumb, written in 1924, and I've got another coming out just a few years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, from a Lodge of Research. Now, before we jump into the program, there's only a few days left. You're going to hear about it later in a little advert we'll put up, but onlinegreatbooks.com enrollment opens in just a few short hours. If you guys are hearing this on Sunday, then Monday, I think, is your last day to enroll for the program. Use your promo code WCY when you do it, and details on our website, wcypodcast.com. Click on Online Great Books program, which is through Intellectual Linear Progression, and that's with Scott Hambrick. Now, we talked to Scott Hambrick in a few episodes back, maybe 20 or 30 episodes ago. A wonderful dude, super smart. He's all about the education of our brothers and using the trivium and quadrivium to really understand the texts that we're reading. Don't want to take my word for it? Head on over to onlinegreatbooks.com and listen to Scott Hambrick tell you a little story over about 2 minutes and 55 seconds. You can spare that, right? So hopefully you guys check that out. Thank you in advance. Our YouTube channel is continuing to evolve and to bolster. We went ahead and released, again, all of the past episodes of Whence Came You to YouTube. Now, the service that we use to do that just automatically dumps everything right there into YouTube in no particular order. So it looks like we've got tons of new episodes and things are dropping like episode 88, or then it'll say episode 10 or episode 1 or episode 160, totally out of order, and it's just wild and crazy. And I do apologize for that. I actually turned off our instant auto notifications for all of you guys so that you're not getting all these crazy updates. And we're going to do that until everything is caught up and all that. But I'm also going through, we're adding thumbnails and titles to everything so that you guys can have a good, solid way of seeing, searching, and reading anything that you might want to research in Freemasonry if we've covered it on the show. So once I'm all done with adding the thumbnail images to the videos, then we'll go through and we're going to clean up some tags. I do want to thank you guys for sticking with me through some of the rough times in order to make sure that we have a wonderful experience going forward. In the beginning, there was a big pull not to push audio direct to YouTube, and that was a few years ago. Now it seems so many podcasts, whether it's just audio alone or not, people consume through YouTube. It's a great way to make playlists and access everything. So we've had to listen to you guys, listen to the people who are actively listening to the show and giving us the feedback, our producers, contributors, and fellows of the program who have given me the direction to move and make sure all the stuff is up to date. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm working for you guys, trying to make this all solid. So I guess that's it in updates. I know it was probably a lot. It seems like a lot. I don't mean for it to be. But let's go ahead. We're going to get into, we have 2 articles this week, as well as a wonderful, brand new Masonic Minute with illustrious brother Stephen L. Harrison, talking about a pipe organ, of all things. So stay tuned, and we're going to get right into this stuff right after this.
Hello, Whence Came You fans. This is Brother Joe Martinez from Manassas, Virginia. Your illustrious host, Brother Robert Johnson, has allowed me to take a few seconds of his program to remind you about our very special event, the inaugural Mid-Atlantic Esotericon, which will be held on June 15th, 2019 at Manassas Lodge number 182 in Manassas, Virginia. This all-day event will include both tiled and untiled presentations from many of your favorite esoteric authors and speakers, to include John T. Ruark, Frater O., Greg Kaminsky, P.D. Newman, Pierce Vaughn, Jamie Lamb, Don McAndrews, and your very own Robert Johnson. Vendors will include the ever-popular Masonic Revival and Ascended Masters clothing. Lunch will be catered, with coffee and snacks available throughout the entire day. Tickets have been selling quickly, and we do have a limited seating capacity, so do not miss out. The Brew Night on June 14th is already sold out, and tickets for the event will be sold until we run out, or April 15th, 2019, whichever comes first. For more information, visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/MA Esotericon, or to purchase tickets, please visit tinyurl.com/MA Esotericon, or search eventbrite.com for Mid-Atlantic Esotericon. If you're looking for a more introspective, thought-provoking, and deeply engaging way to start your summer, look no further than the Mid-Atlantic Esotericon. Again, tickets are going very quickly, so get yours today. And as always, thank you to my dear brother, Robert Johnson, for this time to promote what will certainly be an event to remember.
All right, so the first piece I have for you this week is the level and the plumb. So the level in Freemasonry, typically for any of our Master Masons out there, right? This is the Senior Warden's jewel. He wears it around his neck and is particularly of note, right? At the end of a meeting, the Master asks the Senior Warden, how should Masons meet? And he responds, on the level. And for our profane out there, what does that mean? That it speaks to our ability to condescend or to meet in a way that says, I'm not better than you, you're not better than me, let's talk evenly as equal ground, equal footing, if you will. And the plumb, we say in Masonry, is a tool. It's an image that we see that reminds us that we should be upright in our thinking, in our thoughts, our actions, never deviating from what we could think about as being perfect. And of course, we never have perfect thoughts, perfect deeds, or anything, but the idea is to consistently try, because that try is what makes us better. So here we go, the level and the plumb. It's from a Short Talk Bulletin, volume number 2, way back in June of 1924. Number 6, by, you guessed it, unknown. Like the square and the compasses, the level and the plumb are nearly always united in ritual. They really belong together as much in moral teaching as in practical building. The one is used to lay horizontals, the other is to try perpendiculars, and their use suggests their symbolism. By reason of their use, both are special working tools of the fellowcraft, along with the square, and they are also worn as the jewels by 2 of the principal officers of a lodge. Among the craft masons of older time, the actual work of a building was done by fellowcrafts, using materials gathered and rough-hewn by apprentices, all working under the guidance of the master. In our symbolism, as the apprentice is youth, the fellowcraft is manhood, the time when the actual work of life must be done on the level, by the plumb and the square. Next to the square and the compasses, the level and plumb are among the noblest and simplest symbols of the craft, and their meaning is so plain that it hardly needs to be pointed out. Yet they are so important in use and in meaning that they might almost be numbered among the lesser lights of the lodge. The level, so the newly made Mason is taught, is for the purpose of proving horizontals. An English writer finds a lesson in the structure of the level, in the fact that we know that a surface is level when the fluid is poised and at rest. From this use of the level, he bids us seek to attain a peaceful, balanced poise of mind, undisturbed by the passions which upset and sway us one way or the other. It is a counsel of perfection, but he insists that one of the best services of Masonry is to keep before us high ideals and, what is more, constantly receding ideal. Otherwise we should tire of it. Of course, the great meaning of the level is that it teaches equality, and that is a truth that needs to be carefully understood. There is no little confusion of mind about it. Our Declaration of American Independence tells us that all men are created equal, but not many have tried to think out what those words really mean. With most of us, it is a vague sentiment, a glittering generality born of the fact that all are made of the same dust and sharers of the common human lot, moved by the same great faith and fears, hopes, and loves, walking on the level of time until death, by its grim democracy, erases all distinctions and reduces all to the same level. Anyone who faces the facts knows well enough that all men are not equal, either by nature or by grace. Our humanity resembles the surface of the natural world in its hills and valleys. Men are very unequal in physical power, in mental abilities, in moral quality. No two men are equal. No two are alike. One man towers above his fellows, as a mountain above the hills. Some men can do what others can never do. Some have 5 talents, some 2, and some but 1. A genius can do with effortless ease what is futile for others to attempt. And a poet may be unequal to a hod-carrier in strength and sagacity. When there is inequality of gift, it is idle to talk of equality of opportunity, no matter how fine the phrase may sound. It does not exist. By no glib theory can humanity be reduced to a dead level. The iron wrinkles of facet of fact are stubborn realities. Manifestly, it is better to have it so, because it would make a dull world if all men were equal in a literal sense. As it is, wherein one lacks another excels, and men are drawn together by the fact that they are unequal and unalike. The world has different tasks, demanding different powers, brains to devise, seers to see, hands to execute, prophets to lead. We need poets to inspire, scientists to teach, pioneers to blaze the path to new lands. No doubt this was what Goethe meant when he said that it takes all men to make one man, and the work of each is the glory of all. What then is the equality of which the level is the symbol? Clearly, it is not identity or even similarity of gift and endowment. No, it is something better. It is the equal right of each man to be to the full use and development of such power as he has, whatever it may be, unhindered by injustice or oppression. As our Declaration of Independence puts it, every man has an equal and inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, with due regard for the rights of others in the same quest. Or, as a famous slogan summed it up, quote unquote, equal rights for all, special privileges to none. That is to say, before the law, every man has an equal right to equal justice, as before God, in whose presence all men are one in their littleness. Each receives equal and impartially the blessing of the eternal love, even as the sun shines and the rain falls on all with equal benediction. Albert Pike, and with him many others, have gone so far as to say that Masonry was the first apostle of equality in the true sense. One thing we do know, Freemasonry presided over the birth of our republic, and by the skill of its leaders wrote its basic truth, of which the level is the symbol, into organic law of this land. The war for independence and the fight for constitutional liberty might have had another issue, but for the fact that our leaders were held together by a mystic tie of obligation vowed to the services of the rights of man. Even Thomas Paine, who was not a Mason, wrote an essay in honor of an order which stood for government without tyranny and religion without superstition, two principles which belong together, like the level and the plumb. Thus, by all that is sacred both in our country and our craft, we are pledged to guard, defend, and practice the truth taught by the level. But it is in the free and friendly air of a lodge of masons about an altar of obligation and prayer that the principle of equality finds its most perfect and beautiful expression. There upon the level, the symbol of equality, rich and poor, high and low, prince and plain citizen, men of diverse creeds, parties, interests, and occupations, meet in mutual respect and real regard, forgetting all differences of rank and station, and united for the highest good of all. We meet upon the level, and part upon the square. Titles, ranks, riches do not pass the inner guard, and the humblest brother is held in sacred regard, equally with the brother who has attained the highest round of the wheel of fortune. Every man in the lodge is equally concerned in the building of the temple, and each has his work to do. Because the task demands different gifts and powers, all are equally necessary to the work. The architect who draws the plans, the apprentice who carries stones or shapes them with a chisel and gavel, the fellowcraft who polishes and deposits them in the wall, and the officers who marshal the workmen, guide their labor, and pay their wages. Every one is equal to every other so long as he does good work, true work, square work. None but is necessary to the erection of the edifice, none but receives the honor of the craft, and all together knowing the joy of seeing the temple slowly rising in the midst of their labors. Thus Masonry lifts men to a high level, making each a fellow worker in a great enterprise. And if it is the best brotherhood, it is because it is a brotherhood of the best. The plumb is a symbol so simple that it needs no exposition. As the level teaches unity and diversity and equality in difference, so the plumb is a symbol of rectitude of conduct, integrity of life, and that uprightness of moral character which makes a good and just man. In the art of building, accuracy is integrity, and if a wall be not exactly perpendicular as tested by the plumb line, it is weak and may fall, or else endanger the strength and stability of the whole. Just so, though we meet upon the level, we must each build an upright character by the test of the plumb, or we weaken the fraternity we seek to serve, and imperil its strength and standing in the community. As workmen dare not deviate by the breadth of the hair to the right or to the left of his wall is to be strong and his arch stable, so masons must walk erect and live upright lives. What is meant by an upright life each of us knows, but it has never been better described than in the 15th Psalm, which may be called the religion of a gentleman, and the design upon the trestle-board of every mason. Quote, Lord, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? He that walketh uprightly, and worketh righteously, and speaketh the truth in his heart. He that backbiteth not with his tongue, nor doeth evil to his neighbor, nor taketh up a reproach against his neighbor, in whose eyes a vile person is condemned, but he honoureth them that fear the Lord. He that sweareth to his own hurt, and changeth not. He that putteth not out his money to usury, nor taketh reward against the innocent. He that doeth these things shall never be moved. End quote. What is true of a man is equally true of a nation. The strength of a nation is its integrity, and no nation is stronger than the moral quality of the men who are its citizens. Always it comes back at last to the individual, who is a living stone in the wall of society and the state, making it strong or weak. By every act of injustice, by every lack of integrity, we weaken society and imperil the security and sanctity of the common life. By every noble act, we make all sacred things more sacred and secure for ourselves and for those who come after us. The prophet Amos has a thrilling passage in which he lets us see how God tested the people, which were of old, by the plumb line, and by the same test we are tried. Thus he showed me, and behold, the Lord stood upon the wall, made by a plumb line, with a plumb line in his hand, and the Lord said unto me, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, A plumb line. Then said the Lord, Behold, I will set a plumb line in the midst of my people of Israel. I will not go again past them anymore. So that's the end of this piece. I want to mention that Nick Johnson of the Millennial Freemason blog actually wrote a great piece about this very same last bit of scripture there. Very interesting to note. Also, while we're there, I would like to say thank you once more to Nick Johnson for putting the piece out that I did about politics and religion and lodges. And a huge shout out goes to Eric Diamond and Jason Van Dyke of Ex Oriente podcast for having me on just a week or two ago to talk about that piece and to talk about Freemasonry and how we need to get relevant where we aren't. It was a fantastic time. I was really nervous about going on the program to talk about that paper, but I'm really glad that I did, and infinite thanks to Ex Oriente's founder and creator, Eric Diamond, and his awesome co-host, Jason Van Dyke, who is just a phenomenal dude and brother. Let's get into this week's Masonic Minute with illustrious brother, Stephen L. Harrison.
When Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, he was determined to squash any people or groups he perceived as a threat. Among those groups were the Freemasons, who were among the first to feel the impact of his ruthlessness. In 1935, there were 80,000 members of the fraternity in Germany, with many majestic lodge buildings throughout the country. The temple in Frankfurt was one of the premier Masonic halls there. The lodge hall was on the top floor. It was beautifully decorated with the pride of the lodge, an elaborate pipe organ, standing in the southwest corner. The dazzling instruments supplied the music and added to the majesty of every Masonic occasion. When Hitler dissolved the Masonic lodges, his thugs moved in and gutted the buildings, taking records, books, furniture, and paraphernalia, either destroying what they had taken or selling it. In the wake of this, the brethren in Frankfurt learned their great pipe organ had been dismantled and taken away. The brothers attempted to find what had happened to the instrument, but their requests were only met with scorn. The great organ was lost, and its music, along with the Frankfurt Lodge itself, had been silenced. A decade passed. Finally, the war was over, Hitler defeated, and lodges in Germany, and for that matter all over Europe, were able to take up labors again. One of the first orders of business in Frankfurt was to attempt to locate and reclaim the magnificent pipe organ. Brother Carl Knuckle, organist and Grand Secretary, led a group of brothers in the search. They appealed to the company that built and maintained the organ, feeling it would have been employed to maintain the instrument wherever it had been taken. The company refused to cooperate until Brother Knuckle threatened to sue. With that, the company's management told him they had installed the organ in a small Catholic church in Wiesbaden. Knuckle and his brothers traveled to Wiesbaden, where they found their precious instrument. The head priest there refused even to discuss the possibility of returning it. The brothers then filed a claim with the government, which conducted an inquiry. The priest claimed he was the rightful owner of the pipe organ, having legally purchased it from the government in power at the time. It came out, however, that the Nazis had sold the organ to the church for a fraction of its value. With that, the inquiry ruled the instrument had been illegally seized and returned it to its rightful owners, the lodge. Once the organ was returned and installed, the brothers gathered to hear its music fill the lodge hall once again. Brother Knuckles selected a piece he thought appropriate for the occasion, and which would emphasize the grandeur of the priceless instrument. As the brothers waited with anticipation, Brother Knuckles sat down and struck up the booming notes of a mighty fortress is our God. The great pipe organ was back home. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
Now comes the point in the show where I ask you to help support this show. How do we do that? Well, we have a bunch of different ways to do that today. If you head on over to wcypodcast.com, you can click on direct donation through PayPal, which we briefly touched on at the beginning of the program. Of course, you can make that one-time donation, or you can sign up to be a monthly contributor. Contributing $2 a month, $5, or even $10 a month, whatever you choose really helps the program out. Of course, we have a limited edition shop where you can pick up any number of items that come direct from us. Help us out by going to MasonicRevival.com, but also we have some other affiliates that are really important. Banker's Best, one of the most unique things we've ever done, is to work with Brother Levi Banker out of St. Louis, who owns his own company called Banker's Best Beard and Skincare. He's been so generous. If you head to wcypodcast.com, click on More, then click on Banker's Best, and you can check out a bunch of the different products he's got. He's got a whole line of beard care products, skin care, oils, balms, all of this stuff, and he has been doing it a long time. He knows a lot about it. Everything is handmade, quality items. We even came up with the King Solomon's Reserve Beard Balm, which is a few years old now, but remains one of the great products that he still offers. Even the artwork on the bottle was done by a brother. The nice thing about this particular product is 50% of the proceeds come back to the program. If you're a history guy like me, then you'll be pleased to know that what makes the beard oil and balm very special is that it was made utilizing the fragrances specific to the exports of King Solomon's time and location, which is amazing. So black fig and honey is the formula. Luxurious scent, as Levi says, truly fit for our first Grand Master. If you use the promo code BBWCY357 at checkout, you'll also get a little bit of a percentage off. Please check that out. Banker's Best, or just head on over to buybankersbest.com. We also have a code with On It. You can go to our website, click on More, then go to On It, and you can click through any of the links here, or just go to onit.com and use the promo code WCY at checkout. You'll get 10% off, and they'll send a little bit back to the program to help us out. And of course, it's business time. The book that I wrote with John T. Ruark, it is making some real waves, and people are using it and seeing success. So check that out on Amazon. You can click right to it. You can get it on Audible, Kindle, or in print, even on iBooks. And last but not least, I want to ask you to check out the Great Books program. You'll see the banner for it on the left-hand side, Intellectual Linear Progression. Use the promo code WCY, or you can just click on that link there, and you'll actually go right to the website and hear a little bit from Scott Hambrick about how awesome the program is. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoy, and thank you so much for helping us out. Now, our next piece for this week is called Two Pillars of Masonry by Hugh Ecole. This comes from volume number 18 of the Illinois Lodge of Research, page number 11. This will be featured in the show application as well as the other paper. And before we go any farther, before we read this, I get an email probably once a week asking, how do I get the app? Well, the app is real easy to get. I'm not going to tell you about the past versions or anything. Let's just go forward. Here's how you get it. Go on your device, whether that is an Android device or an iOS device. You're going to go to the App Store or the Google Play Store, respectively, whichever you need to use. You're going to search inside the store for Podcast Source, and it's by Liberated Syndication. They make the app for all of their shows that they help produce and do all the hosting for. So what you'll do is you're going to go into that and search for Whence Came You with a question mark. When you find it, click Add to Shows. It'll add a little tile. So every time you actually open up the app, that'll be the only thing in there unless you really use that application for all of your shows. Once you do that, actually looking at mine right now. So once you're inside of it, on any episode, you're going to see a big play button, and there's a button on the left that says, it's a little text box for comments. Then there's one that looks like a little present. If you click on that, it will actually show you the bonus features, which is a PDF and usually an image to go along with it. The image is usually a file that I've rendered from the web for a mobile Masonic background for your phone or your tablet. And then next to the little gift icon, there's an RSS feed share button. Then there's like a star that you can favorite your episode, or you can click this other button that'll actually download the file direct to your device for later. So that's how you get the app. That's how you access the bonus features. I hope I didn't bore anybody out there who already knows that stuff, but it was important to take just a minute or two there to lay that stuff out for our brothers who are having a rough time with it. It's not always easy and apparent where to go for the bonus features. It's that little present box. Anyway, here we go. 2 Pillars of Masonry by Ecole. A geometric figure depicts 2 parallel lines of equal length. It is explained to Freemasons that one of the lines serves to remind us of John the Baptist, adopted as a patron by our forefathers, the operative stonemasons who erected magnificent structures beginning in the Dark Ages and concluding with the Renaissance. The other parallel line serves to remind us of John the Apostle, an additional patron adopted in the transition from an operative craft into our present speculative fraternity. Among the operative stonemasons was a lodge of Steinmetzen, or stonemasons engaged in the erection of a Cologne cathedral in Germany. Gerhard de Saint Frond, as architect, drew the plans as approved by the Roman Catholic Church. He also served as master of the works during the construction. The usual procedure was that on the saint's day of the saint to whom the cathedral would later be dedicated, a stake was driven, marking the east elevation. A second stake was driven westward from the first stake, and to the extent of the intended length of the edifice. It was driven in alignment with the first stake and the rising sun at the horizon. This established the center line. At right angles to the first and second stakes, the east and west lines were staked. Connecting the east and the west lines at right angles connected the north and south lines. When weather permitted, craftsmen began digging the foundation. Years passed until the completed structure was finished and dedicated in 873 CE. The cathedral was in constant use until 375 years later. Much of Cologne and the cathedral were destroyed in a massive firestorm. It took a year to clear away the rubble. Work to erect a new cathedral began on the very foundation of the destroyed cathedral in 1249 CE, with Albertus Magnus as master overseer. His sketchbook reveals geometric designs, calculations, sketches, and notations. His sketchbook, titled Liber Constructionum, or Construction Book, reveals there were frequent work stoppages due to squabbles between the archbishop and the civil magistrates. In the year 1509 CE, work on the cathedral had progressed to complete the choir and channels that surrounded it. At this point, I interrupt our narration and advance to the year 1820. CE, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte III, as leader of the French army, converted the Cologne Cathedral into a military depot. It was many years later that the archaeological and religious societies formed, raised funds, and supported the restoration of the cathedral to its original plan. Their choice as master of the works was M. Zweiner. Returning to our narrative, it was the year 1509 CE when soon after we learn in the year 1535 CE that the lodge erecting Cologne Cathedral is significant to us. In that year they received a new charter, a portion of which, translated from Latin into English, reads, "On this 24th day in the month of June in the year of our Lord 1535 Anno Domino, know ye present that we, formerly the Society of Stone Squarers, of Joanne Erorum Fraterum, meaning John's brothers, and henceforth as the Valencines, meaning the free and accepted Masons of Flanders, do hereby declare that we celebrate annually the memory of St. John, the forerunner of Christ and patron of our community. So mote it be." End quote. Thus, We are informed that John the Baptist was chosen as the patron Steinmetzen or operative stonemasons at least since 1535 CE, if not even previously. We may be aware that the Roman Catholic Church assigned a day in the year on which to commemorate all those having been sanctified prior to the 10th century. Thus, there were 365 saints, from among whom guilds and crafts might choose a patron saint to protect and guide them. Craftsmen and guildsmen were to refrain from labor on their patron saint feast day, that they might commemorate them in a respectful manner. This usually consisted of attending a worship services, feasting, and conducting business associated with their lodge. The customs continued with fewer lodges employed, now only to repair and enlarge existing structures that remained for maintenance and modification. Wars, famine, drought, and economics combined to drastically conclude construction of large edifices, monuments, walled cities, castles, and municipal buildings. For 700 years, the Roman Catholic Church had provided steady employment for the operative stonemasons. The Dark Ages, Medieval Ages, and Renaissance had all concluded. We may wonder why John the Baptist was chosen as a patron saint. Had June 24th a significance for the stonemasons? Or might his biographical accounts reveal something of significance? Why had they not chosen St. Andrew, St. David, St. George, St. Matthew? Biblical scholars inform us of Zacharias, elderly priest, who was performing duty at the altar in the temple when he was visited by an angel. The angel is said to have informed Zacharias that his equally elderly wife, Elizabeth, would conceive of a child. The angel declared, quote, "He shall make ready a people prepared for the Lord," end quote. Zacharias thought to rush and inform Elizabeth, but discovered that he had become mute. He would not speak again until the baby was born. Elizabeth could not comprehend as her stomach began to swell. Her sister Mary came visiting to discover that both were to conceive about the same time. When Elizabeth bore a son, she and Zacharias named the boy John. About 6 months later, Mary bore a son, whom she and Joseph named Joshua, which in the Grecian language is Jesus. When John was about in his teens, he bid his parents farewell and departed for the wild country west of the Dead Sea. There he wore a camel-hair garment, leather girdle, and carried a wooden staff. He began to refrain from cutting up his hair much as he might. He was a hermit. He eventually met up with the Nazarites, joined them, and as a Nazarite, or Jews who vowed themselves to a life of extraordinary purity and devotion, it is often supposed that both John and Jesus may have sojourned among the Essenes, or 3 Jewish brotherhoods known for their strict discipline and devotion. John eventually returned to the Jordan River Valley. His family and great multitude gathered to welcome him. All hoped to hear of his exploits and impressions on having dwelt in the wilderness. Having their attention, John shouted, quote, "Repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand," end quote. Obediently, they repented for their sins, clothed themselves in white garments, and submitted to being baptized in the Jordan River. On one such occasion, among a group from Nazareth in Galilee, was his cousin Jesus. John felt unqualified, though Jesus insisted upon John performing the baptism. Jesus then departed upon the ministry portion of his 33 earthly years. John remained at the Jordan River, instructing followers in morality, fasting, and praying. Herod Antipas took Salome as his wife, while she was also married to his brother. John spoke, reproving of such actions, calling upon Herod to repent of his sins. John's actions so enraged Herod that he imprisoned John in a castle at Machaerus, near the Dead Sea. While in captivity, John managed to learn the effects that Jesus' ministry was having on the people of Judea. John refused to inform Herod or his guards on anything regarding to Jesus. Salome inquired with Herod to have John decapitated. This occurred prior to the 3rd Passover in Jesus' ministry, or on the 24th day of June in what is now the Christian calendar. John steadfastly thwarted temptation and coercion while suffering his martyrdom. Freemasons aspire for purity of life and conduct. Purity of life is integrity, as in the martyrdom of John the Baptist, which is symbolized by one of the 2 parallel lines. In the era devoid of erecting walled cities, castles, cathedrals, and monuments of stone, unemployment of stonemasons became prevalent, there being need for only lodges of 7 or more stonemasons to maintain and modify the existing structures. Prudently, Such lodges came to welcome the clergy, civil magistrates, and intellectuals to share in feasts at which they commemorated their patron saints. Such events included proposing toasts, games of skill and strength, the singing of songs, and recitation of stonemason legends. It is likely that the clergy and intellectuals as honorary or speculative masons influenced our modern speculative fraternity evolving from the operative craft. What may have prompted choosing John the Apostle as an additional patron? Biblical scholars among the clergy and intellectuals contributed morality and virtue taught by the manner in which the working tools are employed, and geometric persnickety enforces lessons from Greek and biblical philosophy adopted John the Apostle as a patron saint for his preaching of brotherly love. His feast day, December 27th in the Christian calendar, fit for the pattern for semi-annual commemoration of patron saints. If purity of life is reminded by the martyrdom of John the Baptist, then purity of conduct is represented by the brotherly love preached by John the Apostle, as reminded in the second of the two parallel lines. Since at least 1717 CE, the Fraternity of Free and Accepted Masons, or Ancient Free and Accepted Masons, has adopted John the Baptist and John the Apostle as patron saints of the craft, and appropriately commemorate them on June 24th and December 27th. An exception in Scotland, Greece, and Russia is the commemoration of St. Andrew as patron of the craft. Well, there's that piece. It read kind of a odd way, and I hope you guys check out the actual paper. It is strewn with exclamation points. I didn't feel like yelling at the end of every sentence. No disrespect to Hugh, the author. I think he was just excited when he wrote it. It is a good piece, and I think it's got a distinct Christian flavor to it that our Christian audience will appreciate, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I have to mention that my own lodge, Spes Novum, actually celebrates the Feast of St. Andrew also. That's kind of what we're founded on, the basis there. It is interesting. That's it for this week, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. It was a pleasure once again to bring you the WCY podcast. Thank you to everyone out there who is supporting the show through either pin sales or you're shopping at affiliate sites or just sharing the show with your friends and brothers. It's awesome. Thank you to our contributors, fellows, and producers. Thank you so much, guys. We really can't do it without you, and it's just a pleasure to keep bringing you the show. What will the show be like next week? I don't know yet. I haven't written it down yet, but I'll tell you something. You'll hear maybe some updates about what's going on out in California. That's because at the end of the month, I will be at Victorville Lodge number 634 in Victorville, California, doing the Esoterics 101 presentation. It's pretty fantastic, if I do say so myself. I'm not going to bore you with PowerPoint City, but I've got some good visuals for you as we take you through some examples of esoteric Freemasonry, and we take you through some different groups, all of us who have something in common. We'll talk to you all next week. Until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.